Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. The highly anticipated rematch between Fabio Wardley and Frazer Clarke has been confirmed. It's landing on a Riyadh season card, the Beterbiev vs Bivol card, and this will be the 12th of October in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. So Wardley will be putting up his British title again. Remember, this was between Wardley and Clarke for the British title, which Wardley holds, and this will be contested again. So as you can see here from the graphic, this is from the tweet that Turkey LL Sheikh had put out. This will be featuring mid-card. So you've got Beterbiev and Bivol, you've got Shakur Stevenson on that card, Chris Eubank, and then obviously Wardley and Frazer Clarke. So pretty stacked card because you've got Jai Opetaia and Jack Massey below them. Ben Whittaker also on the card, and the rest, well, I'll leave that for others to watch. But we do have, I think, a very good rematch here. The first one was a barn burner, a real rock'em sock'em slugging affair where I think Fabio Wardley will kick himself a little bit. He was deducted a point, but you also had a case where he was a bit wild and sloppy, and you saw the years of amateur experience and the more experience overall in the ring from Clarke, who wasn't throwing a lot of wasted effort. He was pretty economical. He was landing at a decent and high percentage, and ultimately both these guys thought they got the raw end of the stick. I mean, fans were divided over what happened with the scoring. I thought a draw was a fair result, but I did think that Fabio Wardley kind of let things slip a little bit, and I think there was also early on, and this is the difference in experience, Wardley coming out wanting to make a bit of a statement, a lot of adrenaline, and he was pretty wild and sloppy, sort of jumping in, missing wildly. And I do think in a rematch, we're going to see a little bit more of a polished and not circumspect, but I think more judicious Fabio Wardley in terms of some of his work. I think he's going to go after Frazer Clarke again, but I don't think he's going to be as wild when he does it. I do think he has the ability, as we saw in that first fight, to hurt Clarke, and I think he's going to look to just be a little bit more judicious about the way he goes about some of his work. Because at points, obviously, when he was starting to get on top, he might, he sort of lost his head at times early on. I mean, later in the fight, you could see, I think, that some of the wasted effort, the expended effort, which didn't lead anywhere significant early in the fight because he was missing, that was catching him up with him later in the fight because he was gassing towards the end of the fight. Frazer Clarke too, obviously he's a big unit, big guys, 250 pounds or so. He was starting to tire a little bit in that fight, but he was managing. And both these guys, you'd think that it was seesaw sort of action. One guy would grab 30 seconds of a round and you think they're taking it by the fight by the scruff of the neck, and then the other guy would just land something significant to stop them in their tracks and then start to mount a little bit of an attack of their own to try to get the round back. I think we're probably going to see a little bit of that again. We saw Frazer Clarke, I think, announce himself as a heavyweight who wasn't to be dismissed. I mean, he'd had some so-so performances where he hadn't looked great. He'd looked workmanlike. He had sort of said, from different performances, when he gets against someone who wants to fight with him, wants to trade with him, you would see the best of Frazer Clarke. And I think, to a large extent, he was right. I think a lot of people were higher on Frazer Clarke after that fight than they had, including myself, from, some of his earlier displays where it was just kind of like, yeah, okay, well, so what? So we saw some of his quality shining through. I think he's going to, in this fight, this rematch, need to really sort of, when he does get Fabio Wardley hurt, he's going to have to make it count, because I think if we see a more disciplined performance by Fabio Wardley, who I think is the slightly more athletic in terms of that fast twitch, and he's able to get in and out, fast puncher, if he gets on the back foot, Frazer Clarke, and Wardley has the ascendancy, he could either find himself getting broken down and stopped, or potentially he ends up losing a sort of 8-4 type of fight. So I think he might need to mix up his tactics just a little bit, because Frazer Clarke, Fabio Wardley, I should say, probably knows what to expect. I think Wardley, there is upside for him to turn in a better performance in the first fight. I think Frazer Clarke, he's pretty measured. It could largely be the same, but when he gets the opportunities, I think he's going to have to make them count. We didn't see a lot of wasted effort from Clarke in that first fight, so it'll be interesting to see how he can mix up his tactics, what they've sort of taken from the tape from that first fight. Things like Fabio Wardley sort of falling in. He was vulnerable to some uppercuts, and obviously that chin being out there at times, Clarke was taking advantage. He'll have to do a few different things, I think. Maybe that Wardley won't expect, just to keep him on his toes, because if it's the same Frazer Clarke, Wardley will plan for that and will think that he can beat that version. So I like this fight because I think, again, it's a very competitive fight. It's a very 50-50 type of fight. Wardley might go in there with the intention of trying to box a bit smarter and try to play the percentages a little bit more, not be as wild and loose, but he may just revert to type. Sometimes we've seen him get hit in some fights earlier in his career. It almost wakes him up and he goes crazy. Remember Nathan Gorman had a couple of good moments against him, and then Fabio Wardley just basically went to town on him. Could Fabio Wardley, the youth and exuberance and, wanting to make a statement, like the first fight, could that catch up to him to some extent? Well, we're going to see. I like this fight. I like this card. You've got Shakur Stevenson, Joe Cordina, Eubank versus Kamil Ziramata, Wardley, Jai Opetaia, Jack Massey. There's a lot to like about this card, and obviously the main event is for Undisputed at 175. That's a great card. The fact that this is fourth on the bill, this would be a main event in its own right, any day of the week if it was just on a domestic card, or it would, even on a big international card, say in some of these Riyadh season ones, you could justifiably say this could be a co-main event. So might say, well, it's down in, fourth on the bill here. It's not getting the respect it deserves. But at the end of the day, we're seeing the fight. I don't really care where it is. We know this is going to be a good fight. We've seen 12 rounds. We're going to get another good barn burner, I believe. Who's going to make the adjustments, the improvements? Are we going to see a more polished Wardley? Will Frazer Clarke be able to take advantage of some of Wardley's inexperience again? Is someone going to stop someone this time? It looked like a couple of times in the last fight, both guys could have come close, couldn't get the deal done. It was a draw. Let's see it again. Looking forward to it. Drop a comment. Loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter. Boxing_squared. I'm out.